So, Rhonda, if you enjoy your solitude, you don't really want to have to answer to somebody, you basically want to be alone all the time, why are you getting married again? Why? You know you could stay single, right, girl? You know you could casually date, right? Why would you get into a marriage? Let's get into it.
He's rushing into this just because he wants to, be in a relationship and he doesn't want to be alone.
Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Legs and I would greatly appreciate if you would consider supporting the channel by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. It helps to get the videos out there and it inspires me to keep creating. In addition to that, please consider hyping the videos. If you don't know how to hype, you just scroll down to the comment section on your mobile device, slide over to the right, you should see an option to hype. Thank you so much to all of you guys that have been hyping the videos, engaging with the videos, interacting with the videos. So anyway, let's get into it. We are going to be talking about Married at First Sight, episode 5 and 6, and then we will have an individual video for episode 7 coming out in a day or two. Whew. These couples, we're still in Panama. We're still figuring out some different dynamics. We're still having a lot of the same problems. Let's jump in. So Megan and Derek, they are in the car on the way home from paddleboarding.
I really want to make sure that we're both able to bring up things in an open and honest way.
It is very, very tense. The two of them, they are not really talking. They're not really saying a whole lot. They get there and Megan kind of just storms out the car crying. Derek does let us know in the confessional that he feels really bad for making her feel blindsided and or triggered or attacked. And I'm like, you shouldn't, Derek. She was doing entirely too much, and we see a lot of this behavior over these next 2 episodes. But for him, he also wants them to be able to have conversations without it automatically escalating to this point due to being triggered. And that is huge. I feel like in relationships, you do need to be able to bring up the things within your partner that you would like to see changed or things that bother you. There's obviously a good approach. And in my personal opinion, I think Derek approached her very, very chill. I didn't get a condescending vibe off of him or anything like that. So yes, I think for Megan, it's very, very clear that she don't like to be told about herself. And I feel like that's very unhealthy in a relationship because it does create a dynamic where your partner feels like, oh, I can't say anything. I can't really talk because I know that this person is they're going to spiral. They're going to do a lot. So Britney and Will, we also know they are hot on the heels of that fight they had. Britney said that talking to Will is like talking to them chicken fingers she was eating.
But yeah, maybe I shouldn't have left. I'm sorry. Or I should have told you I was leaving.
But Brittany does get back to the room and she kind of talks about how for her, she was not expecting the honeymoon to be so challenging. She thought that communication would be natural, things would flow easily, but instead they are butting heads in every direction. Now, I have a lot of opinions, but Brittany, the first things first is that y'all are strangers. Y'all are complete and utter strangers. But number 2, both of you guys are so rigid. I feel like Will, he is extremely passive aggressive. And I feel like Brittany is extremely guarded. And I feel like those 2 personalities, when trying to communicate, it is painful to watch. Watching the 2 of them try to talk is extremely painful to me. So Will, kind of passive aggressively, is like, so do you always leave without saying anything? Brittany's like, well, I did mention that I was gonna shower, but I mean, yeah, sorry, I guess I should have probably said that I was gonna go get something to eat as well. So Will, again, with a pretty passive aggressive attitude, is like, so have you thought any more about the conversation that we had? And she's like, well, I mean, I guess I upset you by saying that you're like Megan. He's like, no, that's not what it was. Actually, what upset me was the fact that you said that I never ask you any questions and you're doing all of the heavy lifting. At this point, Brittany gets pretty irritated. She's like, you know what? We're never going to see eye to eye. We're never going to see eye to eye. So what is even the point of all of this? And again, What a major communication issue these two have. Will is passive aggressive, which irritates Britney. Britney gets guarded when she feels rejected, and it's just two people talking who are not even seeing each other at all. They're just looking straight past each other and fighting into the ether. It's crazy. At this point, Britney has just shut down, but Will still tries to go over and give her a hug, give her a kiss, say that it's okay, and both of these two of them are wrong. Just for the record, I don't think Will is right. I don't think Britney's right. I think both of the two of them are very wrong. I think I would definitely be irritated if Will was kind of being condescending, had this sort of passive aggressive tone, and then proceeded to try to come over and hug me and say everything's okay. I think from the perspective of Will, it's probably irritating when Britney comes in with an attitude and she's very, very closed off to the point where she doesn't really want to say anything. But in either case, they hug and kiss it out. Will tries to tell her that he still wants to try with her. He still wants to figure this out. You can tell that Britney's still not really feeling it, but you know, we put a pause on that all for right now. But we don't put a pause on it without Will saying, "Oh, you're smiling. Oh my God, we got some teeth today." It's a lot. It's a lot. We catch up with Megan and Derek the next morning. They're going out to sit on the hammock. We learn that the two of them were able to talk further after the situation with paddleboarding, and they were both able to see each other's point of view. Now for Megan, she says that she is not really used to this dynamic of being held accountable and holding a partner accountable. So for her, it's something new to get used to. So in other words, Megan just goes through her life and does whatever she wants, and nobody tells her anything about herself. Great person to be in a relationship with. So they play a game, and one of the questions is about Megan, and she basically talks how she's typically a person who avoids things. She doesn't like to have the hard conversations. She's someone that typically likes to push things under the rug, but that's not something that's really going to work in a relationship. For Megan, she wants to be comfortable having these uncomfortable kinds of conversations. They jump onto having kids, and Derek says that he wants 2 to 3 kids, and Megan is like, "Oh." And I feel like this would have been a perfect opportunity to use having these uncomfortable conversations, to use what you're trying to do. Because she's like, "Oh." And Derek can clearly tell that that's not her vibe. So he's like, "Okay, do you want kids? How many kids?" She's like, "Well, I think 3 would definitely kind of be a lot for me." So they do get into why Megan feels that way, which, hey, for the record, if a woman says she doesn't want that amount of kids, I don't feel like she really needs to give you further explanation. So I get that Derek was just trying to ask questions, but hey, if she doesn't want 2 to 3 kids, she doesn't want 2 to 3 kids, and that's okay. In either case, Megan says that she's afraid of going through pregnancies, the pain of birth, stuff like that. She's not really afraid of being a mom. We then meet up with Pat and Rhonda, and Will and Britney having a bike ride. So Rhonda and Britney, Will and Pat, they break off and have their individual conversations. Britney is expressing to Rhonda how she does feel like she and Will have an instant connection. However, she is realizing that their communication styles are pretty different, as we know. Now, Britney does talk about how some of the things that independent Britney used to do, such as storming out, is just not really acceptable in a marriage. Like, yeah, girl, it's not. So then Rhonda opens up, and basically she and Pat had a conversation about how Pat just got out of and I want to get the timeline right, a 3.5-year relationship 6 months ago.
6 months ago. And it was a 3.5-year relationship.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of wow.
You're probably like, what happened? Like, how did you go from there to...
Right, like how?
So at this point, Rhonda is starting to get a little bit worried because she does not know if Pat is here because he just wants to be with someone, because he's lonely, he wants to fill a void, or if he actually wants to get married. Apparently, during the conversation, Pat felt very triggered, and Rhonda is irritated. She's like, he's so effing sensitive. Oh my goodness. I feel like his last marriage left him really, really broken, and because of that, he's real sensitive now. And I was like, oh. I was like, okay now, Rhonda. Not too much now. I mean, I feel like this is very, very layered because, of course, on the outset, if somebody says 6 months ago they were in a long-term relationship and now they're going on to marrying a stranger, I would also have questions. But at the same time, it's also the tone and the way you approach it and about asking questions and about figuring out what his intentions really are. Rhonda continues on, though, and says that everything triggers Pat and she doesn't want an insecure man. Ooh. Pat and Will, we get a lot less of their conversation, but Will is talking about how in his last relationship, he never really fought with his partner. So with Britney, he's realizing that there's a lot of butting heads. He says, but they're not Britney though. My previous partners, they're not Britney though. And again, he's always giving some kind of slick comment, which I can understand is kind of irritating. Now, Will does realize it's not really normal to never have a fight. And I agree, because sure, you can be in a dynamic where you get along all the time, 24/7, but usually I would imagine that means that you're holding a lot of things in. There's a lot of resentment and it all kind of flows out later on rather than as things are happening, you're discussing them. So all of the couples are on a catamaran. Let's get into it. Josh and Jaylen, they said, I love you. Will realizes there will be bumps, but they need to work on it. She said he thinks she's gorgeous, blah, blah, blah. Chad and Belinda, they are not trying to get too deep on the honeymoon. They're just enjoying each other, but they think they're both dead sexy. And wait on Chad, because I got some stuff to say about him. We get a little scene of Josh and Jaylen, and Josh is jumping in the water, and he convinces Jaylen to also jump in. So Jaylen's feeling really happy. Of course, Josh is more adventurous, and this is her husband. Can I say something? Josh and it's giving a little bit of like rose-colored glasses. I don't know. I just feel like every time we see them, they're so happy and everything's so great and everything's so perfect. And I just really wonder how that's going to look for real. It's nice for now. It's cute for now, but I started to feel that way when I was watching them. Now, Belinda and Chad, they are talking about how, well, Belinda's like, oh my goodness, like she got that all from me. All of the being afraid, not wanting to be adventurous. She definitely got that from me. And Chad's basically like, look, she's with her husband now. She's going to be just fine. So post boat, we see Megan and Derek. They're having a little lunch or dinner, and they had a lot of fun, but they are getting into how Megan has her dog Zoe. And so she's very, very excited to see Zoe. Now for Derek, he's never really had pets. He's not really experienced with dogs. I'm gonna keep it real. A dog would be a deal breaker for me. If I met someone and they had a dog, it would be a deal breaker for me. I have 2 cats, and I understand that cats are also deal breakers for people, but I just could not do it. I feel like dogs are so high maintenance. But in either event, Megan's like, look, it's not going to be that hard. Yeah, she sleeps on the bed with me, but you'll get used to it. You'll love her, basically. Megan is being pretty quiet, though. And I feel like Derek is always the one sort of leading and pulling out the questions. And it just is awkward. Britney and Will go to look at some ancient ruins, and it is still pretty rigid between them, but it seems that they are trying. They do go up to the top of the castle and they kiss. Then we have Pat and Rhonda taking a mixology class, and Rhonda wants to get into the previous night.
He doesn't want to be alone versus really wanting to be married and have a partnership. And I started then like putting a wall up.
So as we know, Rhonda is feeling insecure about the fact that Pat had a serious relationship that was 3.5 years that ended 6 months ago, and he's here on the show. Again, on the surface, don't think it's necessarily the craziest concern, but in either case, Rhonda says, look, I'm not trying to criticize you. I just genuinely want to know what your intentions are. Now for Pat, he claims that that reaction that she had was a lot for him. So it kind of took him aback. And Rhonda's like, what reaction? did I have a reaction? He's like, yeah, I feel like your eyes glassed over. And I'm like, Rhonda, not too much now, because we see you here and we see how exuberant and how big a lot of your reactions are. So I can definitely believe that you were kind of loud. You were making a lot of hand gestures. It might have been a lot for Pat. But in either case, Pat says, yeah, like I just wasn't expecting you to go that far. And I felt like it was very judgmental. So Rhonda talked about again how for her, all she was expressing is that her last relationship was several years ago. And I'm like, Rhonda, just because Pat's timeline is short and that can be interpreted as a red flag, it can also be interpreted as a red flag that you haven't lived with anyone in 25 years, that you haven't had anything that has worked in the past, I think she said 25 years. That also is a red flag, Rhonda. Just saying. Both of y'all have red flags. Rhonda goes on to say she doesn't know if he understands all of this. He doesn't understand what he's getting into. And I'm like, it's a lot of projection right now. It's a lot of projection going on Rhonda's end. Then Rhonda continues and she says she feels smothered. It's not him necessarily, but it's the fact that they have to be around each other 24/7. Usually she'd go out for a walk or usually she'd go do something by herself. Now they have to be together and she's had zero space to herself this entire time. I'm like, Rhonda, why did you want to get married at first sight then? You sound like the kind of person who's, hey, you're a little bit older. Maybe you just have a nice man that you're dating. He has his house. You have your house. You guys meet up. Maybe you guys can have a little sleepover every now and then. It's not giving that you want to be married and have a partner living with you. And that's okay, but why are you here? And again, Rhonda's doing a lot of projecting because she has this built up mental thing that Pat always needs to be with someone. And that's why he's jumping from person to person to person because he can't be alone. But the reality is she doesn't have evidence of that. Rhonda has zero evidence that Pat cannot be alone. So all of this, I feel smothered. I feel like I can't even have a time to walk. Pat's like, go for a walk. You're fine. You could go for a walk. Rhonda says when they get home, that is something she'll for sure need is more space. She feels like because he was insecure, he did not give her the time to process this situation. I was like, Rhonda. And it's hard because we did not see the conversation. We have no idea, Rhonda, you want to go off for hours and hours and hours, or do you want to talk now? But also like, that's just a communication thing to talk about. Some people like to talk about things immediately. Some people need time to process. This is one situation. And for what it's worth, Rhonda, when you wanted to talk about Pat and how you feel like he always talks about himself, you wanted to talk about that right there, right then. And you guys had those conversations. So now all of this, I need time to process. I need all this space, da 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 da. But you want him to be available when he's doing something wrong that you want to speak on. I think we both need to talk about a little bit how we're going to communicate in these types of situations. But they kind of end off this conversation. Pat does say, look, I'm going to be honest. I was under the impression this would be a little bit easier, but I'm still willing to be here and try. Rhonda says that for her, she fully believes in them. And even though they're having these bumps, she's still here. She's still in it. I'm like, okay, Rhonda. I told you, Rhonda was going to be trouble. What did I say? Episode 1. Rhonda is going to give Pat a run for his money. Show is. Then we have Josh and Jaylen. They're just laying out on some chairs. They start to discuss what it will look like having kids since they had pretty different upbringings. From what we remember, Josh, he was raised by his grandparents. They didn't really have a lot of money. And he does express that for him, he would kind of just be all around town, riding his bike, doing pretty much whatever he wanted. He didn't have a lot of structure or a lot of rules. For Jaylen, she was the kid that lived at Toys R Us, that had all the nicest, newest stuff. Remember, her dad was a baseball player, but he wasn't really home a lot, and her parents didn't really express a lot of love for each other. But she always had the biggest parties, everything. She was that kid that had everything that she wanted. So for Josh, his family had a lot of love. You know, he even at one point makes some like comment like, oh my God, my grandparents loved me so much they wanted to kiss me on the lips. And then the show is like, boing. And then Jaylen's like, yeah, that's awesome, you know. But for Jaylen, it wasn't really the same. Again, there wasn't a lot of expressed love in her relationships with like her parents and her family. They then jump on to college and the fact that Jaylen was really nervous because she didn't finish college. So she didn't know if her partner was going to think something of that or not. Josh also did not finish college, but at this point, they are both successful in their own respective rights. Jaylen, of course, has the real estate and the cycling stuff that she does. And then Josh has his business, roofing business, I believe it is. So in either case, Josh does say that he would want to encourage their kids to go to school, but if they have passions or things that they like outside of a traditional college, he's okay with that as well. Chad and Belinda, they are having dinner and they start to talk about their different ideas of romance. So for Belinda, she says it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. It could be something as small as being at home, just hugging, kissing. Chad has a little bit of a different idea and he says, yeah, but I feel like there needs to be an effort so things are not super routine. Because sure, we could cook dinner every night together, but if we're doing that all the time, maybe some fresh flowers, maybe a little bit of a surprise, those kinds of things will make it a little more entertaining. And I think obviously everybody has different ideas of romance. There are so many different love languages and ways that people see love. So I think with that, it just definitely depends on the kind of person that you are. But they continue to go on. And for Belinda, again, hugging, kissing, cuddling, she's very, very baseline with it. And it probably makes sense with Belinda being a stay-at-home mom while, you know, dad was out playing baseball. I think that it makes sense that she's probably not used to this, oh my goodness, extravagant this, extravagant that, I'm gonna have this every single day. In either case, they start to talk about the things that they like about one another. Belinda does go first. So Belinda goes into how she loves the goofy side of him, but she also sees the protector in him, the girl dad. She's really, really into him. And it's Chad's turn. And Chad's like, well, I like, I've had a fun time. And there's a long pause to the point where we hear the producer in the background ask him, what is it that you like about Belinda?
You're killing me. We're trying to talk and we're trying to share. And
he's like, I'm getting there. Like, do you have to interrupt? Can we just talk and go back and forth? And Belinda's like, ooh. And I'm like, surprise, surprise. The guy that opened his intro video saying, most people think I am an a-hole, but I'm actually nice, is an a-hole and not nice. Surprise, surprise. So they sit there in awkward silence for a minute and then they head back to the room and they're in the bed and we see them continuing to talk.
sorry I made it awkward.
I know, it's just for me, it's about respect.
Do you feel disrespected?
So they're awkwardly sitting in the bed and Chad does apologize. He's like, I'm so sorry for making things super awkward. I didn't want it to be that way. Belinda's like, look, it's not about it being awkward between us. It's the fact that it's about respect. And that is huge for me as well. I absolutely hate being around someone or in a group with someone or partnered with someone that is disrespectful to others. It's so embarrassing. And it's just it's shameful because you're sitting there and you're like, what do I do? When this person is barking at this person, being very rude, it also reflects on you as a person. So I definitely understood where Belinda was coming from. And again, are we surprised this is the kind of guy that Chad is? Is anyone surprised? Let me know. Now, Chad says he didn't feel like it was disrespectful. He felt like that was the only way for him to express his feelings and that he's usually the one barking orders at others. So he wasn't really used to it being the production telling him what to do. And I'm like, okay. In either case, Chad does take accountability for the way that he acted. But for Belinda, she says, look, I hear you. I don't really get over things that quickly. So for me, it might take a little minute, even though you did apologize. And Chad's like, okay, take the time you need. We're all good. If you need that time, go ahead and take it. Belinda starts to break down crying and she says, I just don't want to stand up for myself and you resent me. And Chad's like, huh? Like, he legitimately did not know what she said. She's like, I don't know. I don't want to stand up for myself. And then you're mad. And it's a whole thing where you feel like I'm not on your side and there's always something wrong. And Chad's like, there's no sides. We're in a relationship. At the end of the day, if I do something wrong, let me know and we could talk about it. I feel like Belinda is definitely very emotional and definitely has things that are a soft spot for her, where you could definitely tell Chad is more of a rigid guy. He's not so much of a, he gonna be breaking down, crying, rubbing your shoulder and stuff during these situations. In either case, though, the two of them do come to some conclusion. I believe they kiss at the end of it. For me, it would be such a turn off, though, the way that Chad acted, but Chad's already a turn off. From episode 1, Chad has been an auto no for me. And then we get back to the hotel room, and Britney and Will, they are fighting again.
Being intimate with me again, and you're not. So it's just not a good feeling. Like, I feel rejected by you.
So we find out that Britney tried to ask Will if they could be intimate again, and Will basically told her no. So Britney is again in another mood where she feels like she was rejected, like Will didn't want her, and she's shutting down. Will essentially explains that, look, the last time that we got intimate, I was very uncomfortable, and I didn't really like the reaction. And there I do feel like Britney has to have the understanding. Yes, do I think there are a lot of parts of Will that are condescending and whatnot? I do. But I do think that Britney does need to understand and respect the fact that, yes, if you get intimate with someone and then there's this crazy reaction, it is completely possible that the person might want to back off a little bit. I think that Britney ties a lot of her worth to sexual intimacy, which to me is sad because you have way more worth than that, girl. Is it possible in the future that that could be an indicator that he's not into you? Sure, but we don't know right now. And I feel like when you start to hyper fixate on that as the only indicator that someone likes you, it's a really big problem. Now, Will does throw out there that he feels like for her, the biggest facet of being wanted is physical intimacy. And Britney says, no. I mean, if you were with someone that didn't want to get intimate, never wanted to talk to you, always dismissed you, you would definitely feel some type of way about it, right? But they go on in circles again. And then as usual, it kind of ends off with him coming in, going for the hug, telling her it's okay. And I'm like, how many times are y'all going to do this cycle? It's a lot. It's a lot. So Pat and Rhonda are discussing how Rhonda has not cohabitated with someone in the last 25 years. The last time she's lived with someone is 1999. Again, Rhonda, why are you here? Why are you here? Why? Why? Just date normally. Pat talks about, or he starts to get into how they have to start to figure out how to do things together. And she's like, and separately. We definitely need that alone. I'm like, Rhonda, it's too much, girl. It's not giving that you want to be with somebody. Again, it's totally okay to have a casual partner that you hang out with here and there. You guys stay at each other's houses. You have a cute little date, whatever. But you don't have to get married. We also see Megan and Derek and Josh and Jaylen both just discussing how much they want to live together, all the different things that they'll have to figure out once they get back. It is the last night in Panama, so everybody is getting ready to get back to those shared apartments. Episode 6. Alrighty, so it is the last morning in Panama. They are all flying back here to Austin. That's where they're at. So we get some diary cams of everyone doing their thing. Everyone's packing up. Of note, Megan had her clothes on the floor. Like literally straight on that tile floor, Megan had her clothes. Maybe I'm just weird, but that is disgusting to me. We also see Rhonda again reminding Pat that she has not cohabitated with someone for 25 years. So back at the shared apartments, Britney and Will, they are in bed. Britney, let's say, she's like, let's just say Panama never happened. It didn't, we had some good times, mostly bad times, but there were some good times too. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Why does it feel like Britney's always talking about something negative though? I'm not gonna lie. It does give that she's always trying to kind of poke at things negatively. I don't know. But once again, they got to have some clarity on different things. Britney now claims she understands that she hears that Will is attracted to her. It's just that she heard something different when he would make these statements regarding sex. And again, I just feel like that is something Britney needs to think of ASAP, because that is such a like juvenile, shallow level of like viewing yourself and viewing attraction to you. I feel like, yes, when you're like 21 years old, that is definitely a way that you look at things where, oh my goodness, if he liked me, he'd want to F me. But in reality, that is not necessarily the case. Britney is 27. I do think she's actually one of the younger people on there, so I get it. But girl, Britney does admit, though, that he is affectionate and that he does give her compliments. And she lets us know that she is working through traumas from past relationships and not feeling wanted. Ding, ding, ding. Chad and Belinda have another dog conversation. I don't know what it is about all these dog conversations and how people are going to treat each other's dogs. But in either case, Belinda says something about her dog, and the way that her dog is treated is going to be a big tell of things. In addition to that, she says that she wants her dog to sleep in the bed, but Chad says no. And honestly, I'm tired of this. How many of y'all have your dog sleep in the bed? Because look, my cats sleep in the bed, but my cats are indoor cats. They don't go outside, ever. So I don't... Then we see Derek and Megan at their shared apartment. Derek is getting into how he uses all natural cleaning products that he makes himself, or he uses white vinegar. And Megan's like, okay, I don't want my apartment to smell like vinegar. But in either case, they get onto the dog. And basically, Derek again talks about how he's never had a dog. He doesn't really know how things are going to be. But Megan says this dog is literally like her child. So if you don't treat this dog well, I am going to think something of it. Hold on that, by the way. Hold on this whole dog thing. So the next morning, Josh visits the cycling studio that Jaylen works at. Not a whole lot there, but Josh likes to see her in her element. Again, everything is great with these two for now. We have Will and Britney, and they are visiting Britney's house.
Okie dokie. Yes. This is my living room.
Oh.
This is my room.
And Britney's super excited to show Will her house, everything that she's worked for. Again, I believe she's 27. She has this house. Good for her. I'm glad to hear that. But anyways, they go in, they're looking around. Britney is super excited. She's talking about this thing, talking about that thing. Will doesn't really say a lot. It's very clear Will does not care about this house. But they get into the bedroom where Britney has a bunch of clothes folded up and they're on top of this dresser. And he's like, oh, so you just leave all your clothes out unfolded everywhere? Or folded out everywhere?
I just want to bring like this stuff here
Where are we starting from? What, here?
to here. You think it's too much?
These are your clothes. It's what you want.
I'm not gonna lie, that would have driven me nuts because you had nothing to say. You were very mum, and then all of a sudden you're now asking about the house. So Britney says, I mean, I was gonna bring that all with me to the shared apartment. He's like, really? Where's that all gonna go? You gonna wear seven outfits a day? Britney then gets very emotional because she feels like she's being judged.
To my house. And like I was excited for him to like see it and to like see all the things I worked hard for. I feel like he's judging me.
And again, the reaction seemed like a lot to me. I'm not gonna lie. All he did was comment on your clothes, girl. But I do understand the fact that, again, coming in, Will ain't had much to say. He did seem very disinterested, and Britney is crying. She says that this is the first man she's ever brought to her house. She feels like she's being judged for the way that she lives. And once again, Will is extremely confused because Britney storms out, and he's trying to put stuff in the trunk and whatnot, and he's like, again, she's upset. I have to be a mind reader and figure out what's wrong with her. And it's just these two and the communication between them. It's abysmal. Pat and Rhonda, they go over to Rhonda's house. It's very colorful. It's very Rhonda. There's elephants everywhere. It has an open feel. They go outside and they talk about potentially bringing over clothes to each other's houses.
That
Yeah.
I have real concerns about us cohabitating in either one of our spaces. Anyway, it's something we really need to think through.
Or how that would work. And Rhonda's like, whoa now. That's a big if. That's a big if. Okay? I don't know if we're gonna be living together. And it's not a conversation that I wanna have right now. So we could talk about that later. That's a big if the two of us move in. I'm like, Rhonda, this woman does not want to be near any man. Oh, hell no. She does not want a man up in her house. No way. So then we get a diary cam of Derek, and he's outside, he's taking a walk. He's basically saying that last night didn't go super hot because Zoe, Megan's dog, was barking all night. Then the dog wanted to sleep in the bed in his space. And so for him, it was just a situation where he's not feeling the best. He then goes on about how this morning they had a disagreement about who was supposed to walk Zoe. And we get to the living room after that, and we see them both very tense, sitting there super awkwardly. So Megan sort of breaks the ice and says, "You seem angry." And he's like, "I'm gonna be honest. I just want to explain my side of things.
You won't walk it anymore. I want you to want to do it, but if you don't want to do it, don't do it."
Compromise, like that's gonna happen. It's like, okay, like I accept that and I'm okay with it. I guess I'm coming from the perspective too, like I feel like I've been.
So he starts to try to talk and Megan is cutting him off. And that would just irritate me to no end. I feel like Megan is the type of person who she always, she's always being attacked and everybody's always coming for her, but she also doesn't let you speak either. It's so annoying. But in either case, he's like, "Can I just get it out? Like, let me land real quick." So he basically explains that Megan was expecting that he was going to walk Zoe today twice, once in the morning and then once because she was running late. So for him, he wasn't really under the impression that he was going to have to take over these dog duties. He didn't think that she was going to immediately expect him to jump in doing things alone without them doing stuff together and kind of him easing into it. 100% get that. For the record, I 100% get that. When I came into my current relationship, I had one cat. And I did not expect my partner to immediately be changing litter boxes, doing all of these different things. I think you slowly ease into that. You slowly gravitate into that. And in the case of Married at First Sight, it's not like a regular relationship where you can be like, "Oh yeah, I have a cat," and the person has the opportunity to say yes or say no. In Married at First Sight, you don't know what these people have. I don't know if that 100-page questionnaire that they have to do asks about animals, but in the case of Derek, he didn't sign up for this. Literally, I guess you kind of signed up for it by being on here, but I could understand Derek being like, "I just didn't think that I immediately was going to have to be thrust into taking care of your dog." Literally 2 days into when we're living together. Megan immediately defensive. "Okay, I won't do it again then. I won't do it again then. You won't have to. You know what? Anyways, I want you to walk her because you want to walk her, not because I'm forcing you to. I want you to do it because you want to do it." And I'm like, let's remember we're talking about a dog here. Okay, we're not talking about a human being. We're talking about, look, I say this as someone where my cats are my babies, but this reaction is wild. So Derek's like, "Okay, I feel like I've done a lot of compromising when it comes to Zoe. I let her sleep on the bed." And she's like, "I feel like I've been compromising a lot too." "What do you mean?" "I feel like I also have been compromising on certain things." So Derek is like, "What? Can you tell me what?" She doesn't say anything for a while. She's like, well, the cleaning products, I feel like all those new cleaning products, those organic products, they're not what I usually use." And he's like, "You're talking about me using products that are healthier for the environment?" And again, this is a pattern of behavior with Megan, though, where she immediately gets defensive and bites back at how she's doing this. "Well, I did this for you too." Very bad way to communicate. Then she storms into the bathroom and she's like, "I even deal with you not putting the seat down." And I'm like, oh my goodness. So eventually Derek goes over to the bathroom and he's like, "Hey, can we talk? Can we just try to start over a little bit? Look, I just was not expecting that I was going to have to take care of Zoe immediately. I don't mind the walks. I don't mind helping out with her. I just think for me, I was under the impression that maybe because I've never had a partner with a dog, maybe I was under the impression that it was going to be a gradual process that we're easing into." But Derek does point out how Megan gets very, very easily attacked. She feels attacked very easily. She gets very defensive. She reacts really strongly. And that is something for him that is not really going to function in a relationship. And I agree. It's very hard when you have a partner like this where you really can't even have a simple conversation. So again, Derek talks about how for him, the dog sleeping in the bed was a little bit much. That was something that he did not expect, but he's open to splitting the dog walking duties. Megan's like, oh my God, I love talking like this rather than us getting all attacking each other and me feeling ambushed and me feeling like, you're just attacking me. And I'm like, how many times is this woman going to claim that she's being ambushed and attacked? It's giving Karen. It's giving Karen. I'm tired. But in either case, Derek says, next time, for me, can you just ask me how I feel about the dog walking situation? What did I say? Megan's gonna be trouble. Megan and Rhonda, those two are some trouble, boy. Those two are some trouble, the two of them. So Belinda and Chad, they're having a little date at the pew pew range. Well, they're doing bow and arrow. Chad is really happy to see that Belinda was open to doing some of his hobbies because for him, that makes him want to do some more of her hobbies. And overall, he hopes that this momentum can continue and they can continue to do things that keep the relationship exciting. One thing about Chad is he's a person that, based off what he says, it seems like he constantly needs to be stimulated. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. As a girlie who loves to travel, loves to go to concerts, loves to do activities with my partner, with friends, I get that. But I do wonder if Chad is one of those people that gets bored. Because remember, we heard that Chad had 4. This is his 4th marriage. So I'm just wondering if he's someone who gets very easily bored in relationships. So Megan, Derek, and Pastor Cal have a conversation. Basically, they jump right into the dog situation. And you know how these experts, they love to talk about boom boom. They love to inquire about these people's sex lives. It's ridiculous. So Pastor Cal is asking, okay, does a dog sleeping on the bed affect mommy and daddy time? And they're like, we can confirm that it doesn't. So they get into different ways of communicating, and Pastor Cal lets them know that silence is a form of communicating. Not saying anything is a message as well. This is mostly directed towards Megan because she's somebody that doesn't really say a lot of things. They get into the things that they respect about one another, and Derek does really respect her work ethic and sense of humor. So they get into their bumps on the honeymoon and how they got through all of those things. The weird thing about this couple is I feel like they do a lot of like, we're all good. Well, Derek will be honest. I feel like Megan is always kind of like, we're cool. It's good. It's very clear that she has a hard time talking about anything because I feel like even when you could tell she's extremely frustrated and or disgusted because, child, I still don't believe Megan likes that man, not even for a second. But it's very challenging, whereas Derek definitely does seem a bit more open to conversation. Megan does admit, though, that she feels like Derek is a little bit aloof when it comes to Zoe. And I was like, we talking about a dog. So Derek responds is like, okay, can you say that next time? Now, I didn't hear a tone, y'all. Maybe when I'm pulling the clips for the show, I'll remember. I did not hear a tone when he said that. But Megan is like, did you see that? Did you hear his tone? Did you hear that? And Derek's like, I didn't say anything though. Pastor Cal's like, well, it's not necessarily the exact words you said, but it's kind of the energy behind it. It's kind of, there's a change in your demeanor. There's a change in what's going on. So it's not always intentional, but maybe sometimes you might need to mind the way that you direct something towards your partner. Now, y'all know, I think the experts be giving some ish advice on the show. Some absolute garbage advice. Because then Pastor Cal proceeds to say, sometimes in a marriage, you need to just smile, nod, and take it. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what kind of advice is that? And even Derek, I feel like he was like, okay. So then Pastor Cal asks Derek, what would you do next time? And he says, I'd say, well, honey, okay, sure, I'll help you. And then Megan's like, see? And even Pastor Cal's like, come on, you gotta try it. I'm like, what do you expect? Like, this activity is dumb AF. This is so stupid. How can you tell someone smile, nod, and take it, and then be surprised when they give a sarcastic answer? Like, I'm not even gonna hold you. That sarcasm was warranted because that advice was trash. But eventually they do it again, and they come to some kind of consensus. Derek tries to apologize again, and this time I guess Pastor Cal, that passed Pastor Cal's test, and Megan's like, do you feel like that was serious? Because that still didn't feel serious. And now Pastor Cal's like, no, I think he was serious this time around. You should hear him. You should definitely hear what he has. Terrible advice. Terrible advice. Then we have Britney, Will, and Pastor Cal. So they talk about how there's been a lot of ups and downs. That's their favorite thing to say, that there's been a lot of ups and downs. It's been a roller coaster. They've had some good times. They've had some bad times. But the way they communicate is very different. Britney claims that she's emotional. She wears her emotions on her sleeve, while Will is the complete opposite, and she never really has a good idea of how he is feeling. He then jumps into the house situation, because as we know, she stormed out earlier and Will was very confused, and says, look, he had no reaction to the house. I was really proud of this house, and he's the first guy, and all of these different things. But he had a reaction to the fact that she was bringing so much stuff into the shared apartment. Will is kind of like, what? Pastor Cal's like, look, you have to remember, he is not a mind reader. So you have to be open about some of the things you need and some of the ways you need to feel validated, while still understanding as well that for Will, right, you need to love your partner in the way they need to be loved. Again, not the best advice. Like, in my personal opinion, I feel like we need to be diving way deeper into Britney's, like, very strong need for validation, the very superficial and shallow things that she attaches to validation. And we need to be talking about Will and how condescending he is, how underhanded he is, the way that he definitely takes like small jabs in the way that he talks to people. Britney explains that she doesn't say anything usually because she doesn't want Will to think that there's always a negative response or that there's always something wrong. Pastor Cal breaks down, though, that it is possible to say what you need to your partner. It is okay to explain what makes you feel loved or what makes you feel secure. They get into the intimacy conversation again. I'm so sick of this intimacy conversation. And basically, she talks about how she felt really rejected in those moments. And Pastor Cal is like, so, okay, what would have made you feel okay then? And Britney's like, well, if you said something as simple as, I didn't regret what we did. And I'm like, but is that not that's not true. I feel like that's not true because he did regret what you guys did. And so, I don't know. All these insecure people, it's a little bit too much for me. But Pastor Cal tries to explain to Will that Britney is explaining that she wanted him to protect and cover her. Okay. In either case, Britney explains that she has a lot of trouble with vulnerability. It's something she really struggles with among many relationships. And Pastor Cal tells her, look, you have to be able to do that in order to have a healthy marriage and a healthy relationship. So Pat and Rhonda are having a conversation at their shared apartment, and Rhonda's discussing this mountain biking meetup club.
You know, rode with them, so I don't know their name or what they are, but, you know, I could find out. So, anyway.
Right?
And Pat's like, oh, okay, yeah, I think I actually have a friend that does something similar to that, so that's really cool. She's like, yeah, I just wanted to tell you because they meet up every Saturday and it could be something to get into. And he's like, oh yeah, I definitely know. I'll find out more information later. And she's like, I know you can find out more information. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. So Dr. Pia comes over. So they also jump right into their communication issues. And Rhonda explains that when she was explaining the mountain biking club, that she felt like Pat was shutting her out yet again.
About that, like, when did you, like, how long have they been around? Like, you would just like jump to like, I know more, I know guys, I know who to talk to. I'll talk to my guys.
And again, she was expecting Pat to be like, oh, like, how do you know about this? How have you heard about this club? And at this point, I'm like, Rhonda, you're forcing it. The first time I understood where you were coming from, but girl, he does not need to ask you every single time you bring something up your entire life story. Rhonda, you just like to hear yourself talk. You just like to hear yourself talk, and let's just be for real about that. But in either case, Pat's like, I didn't know that it was this deep of a deal, basically. So she continues and basically says that she feels that Pat is constantly trying to prove himself and also trying to prove to her that he has his shit together. And that's why he'll always make things about himself in situations. Dr. Pia's face was priceless. Dr. Pia's my favorite because her face is, she was like, huh? She's like, okay, Rhonda, can you reframe that a little bit? Because I'm a little bit confused. You wanted Pat to ask you more about how you know about the mountain biking club thing. So Rhonda basically explains that in these situations, she does not feel heard. Pat chimes in and says, I'm gonna be honest, in these moments, I feel attacked. You know, she is a very, very direct person, Rhonda, and I feel like sometimes she reacts very strongly and very largely. She has a lot to say. In this moment alone, he points out that her body language will change and she'll get very, very defensive. And again, I'm sorry, Rhonda, but you'll be doing a lot. Miss Rhonda, I feel like I need to call you Miss Rhonda. You do a lot. You are doing a lot. And I understand how Pat can feel that way. Because let's be for real, Rhonda, you just mad that you can't steal the spotlight the whole time. Rhonda starts to get increasingly more agitated. She's like, how can I fucking fix it if I don't even know that this is going on? And everyone in the room is like, this is what we were talking about. Pat's like, this is what I was talking about. So Dr. Pia's like, let's recenter. Rhonda, that reaction you just had was very, very strong when you felt that Pat did not agree with you. So can you understand how in some circumstances, Pat might not want to disagree with you due to a reaction like that? So Rhonda breaks down a little bit and she talks about how for her, she felt like Pat liked that energy, but then one situation happens and now she finds out that he feels like it's all too much. She starts to break down and says in every other relationship, her energy has been too much. And this is where I want to stop you there. Because as bad as I feel, sometimes if something's happening in every single relationship, maybe you need to understand that something you're doing is wrong or off-putting. It's fine to have big energy, but we saw the way that Rhonda was reacting, and Rhonda jumps to conclusions. And it's funny that Rhonda talked about Pat dominating conversations and things like that, which she does the exact same behavior. She'll dominate a conversation. She'll start talking. When she gets something in her head, it's very clear that she's very set in the way she feels. So I don't know, Rhonda. I hear you, but baby, Miss Rhonda, you a little too old for this. Come on. Now, Pat does agree that he needs to get used to Rhonda's energy and learn to appreciate it. I'm like, okay. We shall see. Will and Brittany, they are talking about the Pastor Cal conversation, and Will is essentially saying, look, I'm not going to change overnight. I understand that you need more direct show that you like that I like things or that I enjoy things, but I'm not going to be jumping up for joy every day just because you brought in a box of pizza. And I was like, skirt, stop. If you have so much trouble expressing that your partner did something nice or that you're happy, that's a problem. And I know that the whole thing is Will's nonchalant. I'm not buying that. I still think Will does not like her. And that's the reason why he's having a strong lack of reaction to everything. Because, I don't know, no one's asking you to jump off the rooftops because you brought a box of pizza. But you could definitely say thank you. You could definitely express excitement. Brittany starts to try to say like, oh, I can tell that even though you're not super direct, like maybe by the way you look at me, I can tell that you do like things. And Will starts to get kind of offended. And she's like, I like you. I'm saying I like you. I don't know. These two are so tense. And they just, it's clear, man. And we end off on Pat and Rhonda. So Rhonda is very frustrated. We see her out walking her dogs, and she's talking about how she feels that the way that Pat responded today was very strange in all of this. They were really, really tense even after the conversation. Now she's afraid that Pat's not going to open up because of the way that she was. And she feels like they're in this loop where she acts a certain way and then it causes Pat to shut down. And then she feels like they're getting further and further away. And Rhonda basically feels that she's overwhelmed. She needs to get out now. We see her spiral and I'm like, Miss Rhonda, it's too much. It's too much, Miss Rhonda. But child, that is where we end these 2 episodes. So if you made it to this point in the video, that means you liked the video. So I would greatly appreciate if you would consider supporting the channel by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. It helps to get the videos out there and it inspires me to keep creating. Also, please hype the videos. It is Monday, so I think y'all should have some hypes left this week. Hype the content. Please engage any way you can, and I will talk to you guys for episode 7. And please do not spoil the show in the comments. Episode 7 will be up. Talk to you guys in the next one.